First, Brazil's Supreme Court is hearing the closing arguments in the trial of former President Jair Bolsonaro. He's facing charges of plotting a coup for attempting to remain in power after he lost the election in 2022. While Bolsonaro has been barred from running for public office until 2030, a guilty verdict on the coup charge alone carries a sentence of up to 12 years. Let's take a listen to what the judge had to say earlier.
It is regrettable that another coup has been attempted in Brazil's Republican history, attacking institutions and democracy itself, with the aim of establishing a state of emergency, a true dictatorship.
And joining me now is Jan Onozsko from Rio de Janeiro. Jan, what exactly has been the public reaction to the trial?
Well, the words being used to describe this trial here are historic and unprecedented. This is the first time that a former president of Brazil is standing trial, allegedly for attempting to stage a coup d'etat. And not only is Bolsonaro on trial, but also 7 other defendants, including 3 army generals and the former head of the Navy. They're all accused alongside him of trying to overthrow democracy when Bolsonaro lost the 2022 election to President Lula. Now, with such high-level political and military leaders on trial for the first time, it's not surprising that this has generated a lot of interest. The courtroom is packed out. The trial is being broadcast on TV. Prosecutors allege that Bolsonaro was the leader of a criminal organization that, even before the 2022 election, tried to undermine the legitimacy of Brazil's voting system, attacked its democratic institutions, and all this was intended to be used as a justification for Bolsonaro remaining in power should he lose the election. Also being investigated is an alleged plot to kill President Lula, his vice president, and the Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, who is overseeing this particular trial. It all culminated in the riots on January the 8th, 2023, when Bolsonaro's supporters invaded the Congress and the presidential palace. They've been camping out for weeks outside army headquarters, demanding military intervention, as they called it. But Bolsonaro says that he was not involved in any plot to stage a coup, and he points out that there was a peaceful transfer of power in 2023. For the prosecution, though, the fact that the accused drafted documents and also met to discuss the coup is evidence that the plans were underway and that they wanted to stage this coup.
What are the possible consequences that could result from this hearing?
Well, as you say, Bolsonaro could be facing up to 12 years in prison on just one of the charges of trying to overthrow democracy. But in fact, he's facing 5 charges altogether. And if he's found guilty on all of them, he could be facing 43 years in prison. Now, most experts believe that there is so much evidence against him that he's likely to be found guilty on some, if not all, of the charges. In fact, both Lula's government and Bolsonaro's allies are already preparing for how they will react to a guilty verdict. Lula's government is trying to anticipate whether the US President Donald Trump will impose further sanctions on Brazil if Bolsonaro is jailed. Trump last month slapped 50% tariffs on Brazil for what he describes as a political witch hunt against Bolsonaro, who is a friend of his. And the US's intervention was largely seen as being the result of lobbying by Bolsonaro's politician son, Eduardo, who now lives in Washington and is close to the US government. In fact, he and Bolsonaro, his father, Jair Bolsonaro, are both being investigated now for potential obstruction of justice in this trial by calling on the US to intervene. And in fact, Bolsonaro supporters are slightly worried whether more sanctions will be imposed, because this could actually end up supporting or improving Lula's approval ratings. Meanwhile, other allies of Bolsonaro, such as Tarcísio de Freitas, the governor of Sao Paulo at the moment, the person who's seen as being the most likely candidate for the far right in next year's elections, he's already said that if he wins this next year's presidential elections, the first thing he will do is to pardon Bolsonaro. We're still a long way from that at the moment. The trial is only just resuming today. The prosecution is setting out its case, and we're not expected to have a result in this trial until the end of next week.
Jan, thank you for that.